Okay, so we're on. So in getting through the first section of Aleph here in Psalms 119, et hokika, your command. A very interesting thing, it says in the rest of the verse there, it says Aleph Lamed hyphenated with what's spelled Tav Ayin Zayin Bet Nun Yod, Ayin Dalet hyphen Mem Aleph Dadli. Mem Aleph Dalet, which is the word madly. So you could say, and testified or witnessed madly. It's translated, do not forsake, or I will not forsake. But you could say Aleph Lamed also means toward, which is to say Aleph Lamed can either be translated as no or yes. And the word Ayin Zayin Bet can mean either forsake or to help. And so you could read at the command of your voice, Aleph Tav hyphen de Kuf Yod Kaf. So you could say, I will not forsake, and that very much. Or is he saying, don't forsake me? Or you could say that verse reads, and fortify what had been forsaken or abandoned or brought to desolation, and that madly, which is Mem Aleph Dalet, or MAD, which is like the Doors, had the song "Love Her, Don't You Love Her Madly." Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MADD. I'm just saying English word association with the meaning of some of these Hebrew words. So just because I read in the Hebrew or the Jewish Tanakh that it says, I will not forsake, or maybe it's a request, don't forsake me. But what I'm saying is that it can mean fortify what had been abandoned. Well, that's his Hebrew language. That's the Hebrew nation. 3 verses up is that use of the word hey bet tet, habet, that I was talking about. It's spelled bet hey bet yod tet yod, and it's the word for aspect or to gaze at, Aleph Lamed hyphen Kaf Lamed hyphen Mem Zadi Vav Tav Yod Kaf, where he says basically at that time, I will not be ashamed and gaze at all of your commands. So what I'm saying is that in writing out the rest of the verses here, for each verse, each sentence, each word, David is elaborating the concept, but in this instance, to read just the first word of every verse reads a little different, but it doesn't take away from what David is doing. And I don't think Kurt was recording here a moment ago. We're saying that we could read this sentence backwards. Et hokika odeka az achli ata af ashri. And what I found that in reading the Hebrew words backwards or forwards, or even jumbling them around, it doesn't necessarily change what the words mean. And if somebody does jump them around and lose the heart of the communication, it's to your own peril. Don't blame us. Don't blame me. You can blame yourself for not being ashri. But given that we're just playing, we're messing around with Yahweh's words, there's one other verse up here, the 4th word here, atah, aleph tav hey, Yahweh says, Zadi Vav, that's command, then Pei Kuf Dalet Yod Kaf, your precepts, Lashmar Mad, which is to say, and I will watch or guard madly. Again, there's that word madly, but he uses this word Pei Kuf Dalet Yod Kaf, and he uses it a number of times in this psalm. Now, we've mentioned before that that word pekuf dalet means, or is pronounced fakad, and means, well, he used it in the Ten Commandments where he says, visiting, it's a word translated visiting the iniquity of those who hate me to the third and fourth generation. Visiting, pekuf dalet. But here it's translated precepts. So the question is, how can pekuf dalet be a precept, but at the same time mean visiting, as in punishing? What's a precept? What does it mean to punish? If you look up the word in the dictionary, the word pekuf dalet means commanded, ordered. Well, those are precepts. A precept is something that is commanded, like a law, like a command is commanded, an order is ordered. But what does pekuf dalet mean? It means that you are given oversight of a trust, the executor of a trust. An employee is given a certain responsibility to, you might say, make the front face of a corporate interest. An officer of a police department, of a military unit, is the face of the entire nation. The entire intent of the military force, you might say, is focused on one individual officer, on projecting or being the tip of the spear, and the entire military of the entire nation is behind that one officer as the point man going forward. That's what the word pekuf dalet means. But it also means that the point man, having the entire force of the military behind him and the entire diplomatic corps of the country politically behind that officer, backing up that officer better do what he's entrusted to do. And so when Yahuwah says visiting the iniquity, it's that officer has the oversight of a trust. It also means that officer is supposed to attend to what was entrusted to him. He has a responsibility, and he will be punished for any lack of living into that responsibility. And it also means that everything that officer does as representative of the trust will be remembered, recalled. He will be punished for any void, and that Yahweh then will call each of his people, each of his reshmen, each of us, to give account for ourselves what we did with what we were given. It's a picture then, this word pekuf dalet, of exactly the same parable as Yeshua telling about the wealthy man who goes away and leaves talents to his servants. 5 to this one, 3 to that, 1 to the next. He leaves, they invest, they use, and then when he comes back, they have to give an account for what they did with those talents. The ones that did well were entrusted with more. The one that was afraid, buried the talent, was scolded and told to be thrown in prison and have to repay. And it's a New Testament story. But the point is, that is an elaboration of the word pekuf dalet. But here it's simply translated precept. So when David said, "You have commanded precepts that I will guard madly," if we don't know what the word precept is, we've missed the whole thing. If we think, oh, he gave us talents, now we might think, oh, those are like abilities, a talent to be an athlete or a musician or a gardener, or the talent to be some kind of a scientist or artist or engineer. But maybe the word talent is a type of wealth. A talent of silver was a certain weight. Regardless of what it is, whatever he entrusts us with, we are accountable to him. And if somebody else says, I think you guys are making up stuff and I don't want to listen, fine, don't. But we are going to be held, each one of us responsible, standing in front of Yahuwah, our Elohim, for every bit of understanding and every bit of strength that he gave us, whether it's financial or physical or mental. And we're going to have to give account of ourselves with serious consequences. That's Pekuf Dalet. And so David said, I'm going to watch this closely. I'm going to guard it madly. That's the word simply starting with the word Aleph Tav Hey. And so what I'm saying, I could read that as the word you, Y-O-U, or I can read it as Aleph Tav revealed. Okay, I'm not minimizing the rest of what David said. Is what that means is we better behave as if we are expressing in truth and pure validity, pure, clean bet reshness, Aleph Tav, which then is Yahuwah's own personal character, nature. It's like the force of the kingdom behind each one of these 22 letters, as if each one of these 2 letters is one of the officers of his hosts, his legions, his zavot. Just like each one of these letters is the tip of the spear, and that the entire kingdom and the majesty of Yahuwah himself in all his English words, glory and honor and prestige, and just like the tip of the spear has the rest of the head of the spear and the shaft behind it as a mass and momentum being launched by some cannon or bow, that all that force is behind each letter and behind us. And therefore, for us to take on the mind of saying, I'm going to afatah, I'm going to be characterized as the nose, as the tip of the spear, I dare to presume to represent the kingdom of Yahweh in my character as his resh man. That's a pretty serious business. That's the most serious business we could ever presume as a human to take on for ourselves. But yet that's exactly what David was, what Abraham was, what Moshe, Joseph, Daniel, Yeshua. That's what each one of us are called to be, as Gilin was saying, calling us to be Elohim on the earth, as even Yeshua made mention of. It's like, gosh, what does that mean? How do we do that? We better represent each one of these 22 letters. And if we do that, that's the formula for success. But how do you do that? The letter Bet. The first letter is Bama, which literally the word Bima means staging, as a theatrical presentation. Mem Hey is the word what? Or why, how, of what it, and so it says, the rest of the sentence, Izacha Nar et Araku Leshmar Ka Debraka. By how can a young man purify his way? It's the word Zach Zion Kaf is a synonym with Bet Resh, which is to make pure and clean. Nun Ayin Resh is the word for youth, but it's also to be one who is vigilant. Nun is the prefix letter. Ayin Resh is to be watchful and guard. And then Aleph Resh Het is a similar word to Dalet Resh Kaf, which is to say the journey or the provisions of the journey or the way you conduct yourself on the journey. And then it's the word La Shamar. That's the word Shomri, or where we get the word samurai, or Shomer, which is the first command in the garden. Guard the garden. Watch, keep, guard, observe, and remove the dregs, rake the leaves, as it were. And then Kaf, Dalet, Bet, Resh, Kaf. First Kaf is a prefix meaning like. The last Kaf is like you or your. And then the word Dabar is the word to say or to speak or stipulate. It says, okay, guard what you said, just like you said. Do what you said. So then when we're told, yeah, but he changed his words, he changed the meaning of the word, he changed the definitions, he nailed it to the cross and did away. Well, now we don't know what we're dealing with. But according to David here, it says the whole thing of how to conduct everything he talked about in the Aleph section is now going to be staged. Now the Bet section describes the manifest. Put this on display, run it out as a narrative that we can see it. We can look at the pictures. Oh, there you go. You got the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So the Bet of the alphabet is the alphabet. The manifestation of Yahweh's, what's in his mind of the Aleph, is played out in the entire physical universe. That's the Bet of the first word of John 1:1. So Yahuwah here determines this word all in his mind, you might say. That's the Aleph. And as soon as it's put on display, there's the Bet of the universe and everything in it. The birds, the bees, the butterflies, the flowers, the trees, the lakes, the streams, the humans, the animals, the stars and galaxies and nebulas. It's all the Bet of the Aleph. So what I'm saying is that if we know what the letters mean, just like Elin was saying, if you bear in mind that each of these next sections in their own place is somehow talking about what the letter means, but it's also following on the heels chronological order with the one or the ones that came before it. So as you ponder, I'm saying there's a couple ways to read Psalm 119. One is just read the narrative in the English. Two, just read each of the 8 words as if it was his own sentence. And 3, go back and look at the explanation of the verse laid out in Hebrew and look up those words. I mean, this is a huge study that would take you a lot of time, but if you do it, you will end up being much more proficient at regarding Hebrew than you ever were to begin with. And you have to, Ashri, conduct the own study as if you were the maestro. Sar can mean maestro, master, minister, patron. You've got to take the initiative. You've got to be proactive. The next phrase, Bama, by what staging? Bakal Lavi, with all my heart. There's the meaning. You have to be proactive. You have to do this as if your very eternal destiny is hinged on this effort right here. If you believe that what you end up doing for eternity is already mapped out, if you're one of the elect, and if you're not one of the elect, too bad for you, you're going to burn in hell. Maybe. But if your eternal destiny is a projection of who you choose to be and how you choose to do it right here and now, and as your life is living, is existing, your life as you choose within your heart to be, to do, to identify as the character because of your personal choices, then if you determine to do something with a little bit of heart, casual indifference, whatever, or you say, I'm going to do this with all my heart. I'm going to muster every bit of zeal, every ounce of energy. If you could quantify energy, if you could qualify, which is to say what's the nature of, and quantify what's the mass of, all your effort, and say, I'm going to pursue being a man of Yah. I'm going to pursue being Yahuwah's Israel, my father's child. With all my heart. The next word, belavi, is the condition of my heart, which is to say, accordingly as, because the letter bet as a prefix means in the condition of. So what I'm saying is that I could look at each one of these words, and as I'm contemplating it and determining what the word means, I find that the very next word in the sentence is exactly proving it to be on track and on target. The condition of my heart is to say, bet lamed bet yod. Well, bet lamed is where we get the word for nothing, but lamed bet is heart, bet yod is in me. And I could say, if you hide something away so that it's not even visible, like it's nothing, it's not evident to anybody but you and Elohim. Bet lamed, lamed bet, bet yod. Within me, though it appears to be nothing, he knows what's my heart. And David goes on to say in that verse, I have hidden or treasured your Aleph Mem Resh, so that I will not sin against you. So his Aleph Mem Resh is similar to Dalet Bet Resh. Amer is a declaration. It's a lofty utterance. It's a picture of the antlers of an elk, you might say. I have treasured your declarations. The words that you spoke are treasured in my heart as being like a rack of elk antlers. Wonderful, lofty, beautiful ornamentations that other people might translate into nothingness or some alternative language that other people might say, they're done away with it. Or other people might say, I don't know and I don't care. Or other people might say, it's too hard for me or doesn't matter to me because all my matters are already laid out in front of me and my treasures are laid up in heaven. It doesn't matter what anybody else say. David said, listen, this is nothing but what's in my heart. The next word is Baruch, which is blessing, but Bet Resh Vav Kav, Bet Resh can be read as pure and clean, connected to then Kav suffix. The open hand could be translated as you or your, but Baruch is the word for to bend the knee or to bless. You could say it's the purity of your regard. Baruch I then could read as David saying, listen, I don't care whether anybody else gets it or not. You know my heart, and you will bless me according to as you know my heart is. And even if I was wrong, even if I had the wrong calendar or pronounced your sacred name with the wrong vowel phonetic, you know what's in my heart. The next word, bet shin pei tav yod, ba shafati. Tav yod I've seen it translated both I will speak or I will have spoken. Tav yod is the suffix meaning I will or I will have. Bet is a condition. Shafet is the word for lip language or tongue. Pei tav is something that opens up and spreads out almost like a blossoming flower, butterfly wings opening up to show what's the pattern. So I could read this word beshofeti. I speak, my lips, my language, I will open. I will sefer all the mishpat of your mouth, all the balancing of scales. David's saying, I'm going to figure out what everything you said means so that I can then make my decisions accordingly. I can then conduct my affairs in accordance with the way you designed the universe. Because this is all in the letter bet, and he's saying, I know that everything that exists in the universe is a manifest of the whole alphabet, of the entire 22-letter array that you had already predetermined that it should work as a flow, that it should work as a flow chart, as an energy field, that it works as a composition, as a musical song with everything fit together, as a poem, as a flow of consciousness, that the Messiah himself is the manifest in human form of these 22 letters. And as I ponder the way the whole thing fits and works, the blessing is mine if I can keep my heart on that course. Now I'm reading the words backwards. Go on to the next words. But Derek, that's on course. See, it's working both ways. I'm just saying. But Dalet Resh is generation. So I could look at the word Bet Derek. Bet Dalet Resh Kaf. Derek is way. So bet can mean, but I could read Bet Dalet is the word that means no other. Dalet Resh is generation. And Resh Kaf is where we get the word for delicate. So bet can mean on, Derek is course. So I could read this as saying no other generation on your course or your route. Delicate. Delicate? Well, that's like the word kadoshi or chaneni, which is to say it's not about who's mas macho. It's not about who's the baddest, toughest guy. Who's the kid who can withstand the most pain on the block? He gets to be the chief of our tribe. It's not about that. David goes on to say in that verse, I rejoice in your ayin dalet vav tav. I rejoice in your testimonies. It's not about who's the biggest and toughest. David said, I find my treasure, my value, my worth. I find my thrill in hearing the voice of how these letters testify of the reality. To comprehend what these letters mean as pointing to the heart, the face of Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, our Father in heaven, manifested as the very Yeshua himself, is the ultimate treasure. And yet, for over 60 years of my life, 66, for over 65 years, I could say, Brad Scott had some mention of there's a value in these words. Frank Seekins wrote the book Hebrew Word Pictures to show a certain regard, but I don't really have ever heard anybody say these words are the world's greatest treasure. To understand what these letters means is the epitome, the ultimate, the penultimate, the quintessential treasure of all the universe for all time is in knowing what these letters mean, that they are the very essence of our Elohim, of our projected future, of our identity, is in comprehending the habet, the habitat, the gazing and looking at these letters, each individual and in their sequence. And then as they are arrayed to spell words, this is it. Never heard anybody say that. That's the idea that we're trying to promote by even talking about this, so that other people can have the thoughts in their head to say, hey, maybe I should look at this. Because nobody else that I know of has ever said, you should look at this. The next word, bet, pekuf, dalet. Hey, there's that word fakad. There's that word precept, bet, pekuf, dalet, yod, kaf. But I could say that this could be, I'm expecting your visitation, experiencing your punishment. You will mishpat. I communicate and gaze at your route, your accommodations. And then the last word, bet, chet, kuf, tav, yod, kaf. I will imitate your decrees as inscribed, because the word chet, kuf means to imitate and to ascribe, and it's the word for command or constitution. David went on to say here, I will delight in retaining, not forgetting. But another way to read that is your word was made forgotten into oblivion. I will find it. Or he might be saying, I will not be content until I find the meaning of your words. David was given this sense of this treasure. And he said, listen, I don't care if I win every battle. I don't care if I watch every one of the great movies on TV. I don't care if I have $1 million. I'm not content. I can't be satisfied until I find what these things mean. That's what I believe that David is saying by this last sentence. And again, going back to the first word in the bet section, by what? Of what staging? When all my heart is parallel, is in sync, is resonating with what these 22 letters mean. And I can open my mouth, and not just that you know how to be fluent and articulate and speak these words, but when what's in our heart overflows to what these things mean. Remember, Yeshua said, I only say what I hear my Father saying. So somehow this is the speech. Expecting your visitation. There's something about expecting the Aviv, the springtime, and the flowers open up. And then when the flowers open it up, it attracts the insects to pollinate. And I've heard it said even when birds sing in the morning, the birds are actually, by their song, causing the flowers to open up. So which one is the, you might say, the first catalyst event? Is it the birds singing? When you hear a rooster crowing in the morning, he goes off first, and then he gets the other birds going, and then the birds get the flowers opening, and the flowers opening gets the pollinators, the butterflies and the bees and stuff going, and then everything bursts into this. I mean, it's all, if everything is a fractal pattern, then it's all staged according to this system of how it works. And if we are right now at the Peizadi, reading in the sequence, Peizadi, open mouth, open tomb, Yeshua coming out of the grave, springtime, the dormancy on explosive array, display, Israel coming back to the language, Israel coming out of the banishment, Israel coming out of being scattered across the face of the earth, where Yahweh says, I will whistle for Ephraim and I will bring him back. And even if he's on the far side of the heavens in some sort of spaceship, I will bring back every one of you to the land. I swore that I would, and I will. This world cannot end until he's accomplished that promise. Peizadi Kuf. If that's where we are right now, and that's the staging, I will imitate your decrees as inscribed. Okay, that's what we should be doing then. Expect his visitation and imitate. Let's start doing exactly what he said. That's why we're trying to keep the Moedim, even though we don't know the right calendar and we don't know how to conduct sacrifices, or even whether sacrifices are required. Probably not. Just have a barbecue as far as I'm concerned. But what do I know? And rejoice in his words. That's where we're at. And then, Gimel, there's a recompense and a reward coming. Why? Because that's Pei Kuf Dalet. It means he will give payment as due, punishment for, or curse for those who have messed everything up and gone wayward of his ways, and the blessing of giving the more talents to those guys who are found worthy and capable and did what he asked them to do. That's the parable of the talents. Galaini, uncover my eyes, restore my fascination with discovery is another way to read that. And if you don't have any interest in this stuff, it's okay to ask him to give you an interest. Will you please unveil my eyes so that I can be enthralled with your things? Please light a fire in my heart for your ways. Thank you. Gimel Resh, guard, angel, alien, stranger, foreign. Goes on to say, please don't make your mitzvot hidden, a hidden secret. For me, I don't want to be a foreign alien to your ways. I want to be resident. of your kingdom. I want to be one of you. Cleanse the alien inclinations from my heart. In which case, we ought to find his Shabbat and Moedim delightful. And if we don't, then we can say, please cause me to be finding delight. And I noticed that when I first started to keep the Shabbat, it's like, I don't find it to be a Shabbat to be a delight. It's a grievous intrusion. But then it's like, well, no, wait a minute. It says in Isaiah, if you call the Sabbath day a delight, it didn't say if you find it a delight. So I realized that I was in the driver's seat, and I started calling the Shabbat a delight. The word oneg is delightful. So shinayan, sha can be delight. Shasha. I had to willingly change my mind and change my words and change my heart, and then it became so. Proactive intent and behavior. Well, I'll just wait until God makes my heart find a delight. No, that's not what he said. Not what he said. He said, you set the day apart. You remember it and set it to use a car, the Yom Shabbat, and you kadosh the day. When we start behaving according to what he said, everything else starts happening. That's the word gimel. According to what we have a regard of hearing his Torah, gimel mem, even so, reciprocal action, he will either hear a voice or not hear a voice. The next word in gimel is gimel resh shin, or gimel resh samik hey, gris. That's where we get the word like a grist mill, which is like a water mill back in the olden days that between stones ground the grains into cereal for, making a porridge or making what they call crumbles, giving it to feed the chickens. It means to crush into pieces. Gimel ayin resh tav means rebuked, scolded, and cursed. Gimel lamed is exile. But Gimel lamed is also turning the tables like a revolving door. Gimel mem is many heaped up with that reciprocal mirror image. And then gam edatika is, you could say, many will testify of your correctness, orthodoxy, justice is stated, or you said it and so you did it, so you done it, just like you said. Nehemiah said the same thing, Daniel said the same thing, Moshe said the same thing. Anytime we stop and look and say, gosh, this whole world is completely spun out, screwed up, upside down, not working, everything bass-ackwards. Oh, wait a minute, just like you said. Yahweh has done faithfully exactly what he said he'd do. We're the ones who have twisted everything around, but yet with that, he's given us the antidote. He's given us the formula to turn it all around. Just do what he said. Just start doing what he said. Then you get into Dalet. Dalet bet kuf hey, which means cling to. Dalet bet is the word for bear. Kuf is like this bear claw, and like a bear, a steady pursuit. Dereki, my way. Dereki, there's that word fakod, fakudika, pekuf vav dalet. Way of your precepts. The way, realizing that like being given a talent, like being given understanding of your ways, your precepts, the understanding of what these 22 letters mean and what it means to be your Ish Israel, man of Israel, Ish Brit, Brit Ish, man of the covenant, man to whom understanding has been entrusted. We will then be held accountable what we did with it, whether we tossed it aside with a casual disregard or whether we put it into other languages and translated it so that other people could understand, but never gave them the real understanding. As we said a couple weeks ago, the Nez Perce Indians that lived up in Native Americans that lived in Washington State and Idaho sent 6 emissaries to St. Louis. Many of them died along the way. And then they said, we understand you Americans have the book of heaven. We would like to have it, please. Our people are languishing and dying. And they were given trinkets and objects, but nothing of the book of heaven. And the Nez Perce said, now we have to go back and tell our people we have nothing and that our people will die. Well, many have never heard these words, and perhaps, hopefully, Yahuwah will have a mercy on them, that even if they never had these words, he knows their heart. He knows what's the yearning of their heart. But there's an incredible value in having these words, these exact words, and knowing every meaning of every letter. And I believe that it doesn't matter what nation you come from or what language or what religion you were brought up with, if you could stare at these 22 letters, they will speak to your heart and communicate with the maker and designer of these letters, Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel, and that you don't even have to translate them with an interim modifier of language being English, Greek, or Latin, but there's something about the consciousness of every human being can relate directly to the message contained in the Samic and the Nun, the shape and the meaning of every one of these 22 letters. First person, drip by drip. You could say that word dalfa, the next word, dalet lamed pe hey. And just so people who want to argue about, oh, you can't split words apart, you look at page 126 in the Red Dictionary and it said there's a certain word called delphun, which I believe is, maybe you guys can correct me, is a French word. Speaking of the firstborn inheritor of the throne of the French kingship back a few hundred years ago, but I think that was called a delphun. But the point is, they said, well, the first two letters, dalet lamed, means poor, proving right there that you can look at the two-letter root of a word, even if it's a three-letter word. And it means, so dalet lamed is the word that means poor, and then pe hey means hear or mouth, and lamed pe hey means of the mouth, poor of the mouth. That's the word that means drip or drop, like mincing with as children, because it's a synonym with tet pay. Just saying there's this mincing gait. And so even if David is saying, even if I treat your stuff, your precepts, your fakad as a child, a toddler, as a toddling child, my way is still to cling to your words with a steady pursuit. I'm reading backwards now in the sentence. And then he goes on, direct sakar, like sucker at shinku fresh, the way of falsehood. It's like this tottering child. I'm lied to, I'm tricked, I'm deceived by my culture, my teachers, by the 2,730 years of imprisonment, banishment. Okay, but it's the direct amuna, the way of truth and fidelity that we were handed. That is what I will cling to, like the bear claw, the same word again. Dabakti, I will cling as a bear claw, and then derek mitzvotika, the way of your commands, or I will do as commanded. I will set my face to cling to your commands and do them, even if I walk mincingly as a child, step by step, drip by drop, one at a time. Pursue as a bear, cling to as a bear claw. That's what I'm going to do. That's what David's saying. Okay, there, we got to the end of Dalet. Anybody got anything they want to throw in?
I like the fact that he's calling us to be like him. And I think that the more we become like him, the more others are going to be attracted to what we know or what we're doing, and ask, why are you set apart? Why are you different? And this is going to be what I'm hoping, and I'm praying that this is going to be what is the start of changing those around us, those that we speak to. We were talking about the other day that we speak to people and they don't hear what we're saying. They don't get what we're saying. They don't want to hear what we're saying. So We can speak all we want. We can have all this knowledge, but the more we become like him, I think the more he will be able to entrust his, uh, his authority here on this world.
Amen.
Well, I think what you're saying sounds good in theory, but I got to admit that apparently I'm not doing a very good job, because people still look at me in a conversation I was having a few days ago, and they said I'm bashing the Savior. I'm essentially almost re-crucifying him, and that I am essentially an infidel. Really? Well, if that's what I'm projecting, then no one's going to look at me and say, gee, we want some of that. And so what I'm saying is that what you're saying is, if we do these things, if we ponder these things, maybe others will look and say, hey, we want some of that. And it's like, then don't look at me, because apparently that's not what's happening. But they should look at these words and deal with them first person. Don't even think of me as an intermediate link. I'm just trying to encourage people, look at these words. Just take your time to look at them firsthand. Have it be between you and him. I'm just pointing to the words, his hand, not mine. Don't look at me and use me as a model. I think it must fall pretty short. Go ahead. Somebody's trying to say something, but I
just said, don't stop.
I'm racing with all my might.
Yes.
For whatever that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it's it's you have started this, and slowly people are catching on to this. So maybe there's a threshold of people who need to be thinking and doing this, and maybe there's a threshold. I'm hoping, I'm praying that this word. Well, we know what happens in the book of Revelations. We know what happens, but
well, I think what you mean by threshold, when Abraham was saying, gosh, Elohim, Yahweh, if you had 50 people living in the area of Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the plain, would you still wipe them all out? No, if there was 50, I wouldn't. What about 10? No, if there was 10, I wouldn't wipe out. Yahweh would have allowed all the perversion, all the injustice, all the crime to still keep happening, even if there were 10. But there wasn't 10. So he wiped them all out, and he got Lot and his 2 daughters and his wife out of there. But then his wife turned to a pillar of salt, and the 2 daughters kind of went nuts. But the point is, 3 got out. A minyan is 10, what's called a legal quorum minimum. So what's the threshold? May it be 10, or who knows? It's all speculation. But the idea is, look at it. Let's just each one of us be responsible for ourselves. Look at these things, figure out what they mean, and let's run with it. And we can talk about it from time to time. That's about the best we got going.